In 1996, David Chalmers said the following words: "For a number of years, I had hope for a materialist theory. When I gave up on this hope, it was quite reluctantly. It eventually seemed plain to me that these conclusions were forced on anyone who wanted to take consciousness seriously. Materialism is a beautiful and compelling view of the world, but to account for consciousness, we have to go beyond the resources it provides." The mind-body problem is one of the most long-standing, famous problems in philosophy. Not just philosophy, even poets have struggled with it. William Butler Yeats, we just quoted earlier, he had an entire poem titled Dialogue Between the Self and the Soul. Walt Whitman had once written, "I'm the poet of the body and the poet of the soul," that he's at a conflict between the two. The mind-body problem has plagued both philosophers and poets alike. How does grounding principles, how does that help revisit this question and maybe even point us in the right direction?
Great. Yeah, so I've tried to make the case that this conception of metaphysical grounding opens new resources for a materialist / physicalist conception of reality, which I myself favor, and Chalmers himself in that beautiful passage favored as well until he felt just compelled to abandon it.
Yeah.
So this is new hope for reviving a physicalist materialist perspective. And the idea is that Chalmers was right about consciousness. He's right that just from the physics alone, we will never be able to get the kind of a priori entailment that he sought for consciousness. And for Chalmers, what that means is, roughly speaking, a perfect mind, an ideal mind. Should she be told the exact physical layout of the universe, that wouldn't be enough information for her to figure out if any beings in that universe were having conscious experiences, or if we were all just, as it were, as in Chalmers' term, zombies who were merely behaving but weren't feeling anything on the inside, whether the lights are on the inside or not. So I think Chalmers is right about consciousness. I just think that same argument works for almost any derivative outcome whatsoever. So I think that same ideal mind, told merely of the physical layout of the universe, also wouldn't know whether there are any sets, because she wouldn't know yet whether the principle of set formation, that machine, the analogy with that machine that I was talking about earlier, she wouldn't know whether the set formation machine was operative. So she might know that there's a particular particle, let's say, Sparky the electron. She might say, okay, Sparky the electron exists, but is there such a thing as the set singleton Sparky, the set that has Sparky as its one and only member? I say she's not yet she hasn't been given enough information to answer the question until she's been given the information as to whether or not the principle of set formation is operative. Tell her set formation is operative and that ideal mind, boom, she'll immediately be able to figure out that singleton Sparky exists. But tell her that set formation isn't operative and no analogous set formation principle is operating either, and she'll immediately be able to figure out, there is no set singleton Sparky or any other set for that matter. So you just have to add to the ideal mind. You have to give her the additional information of which grounding principles are operative. So I think that from the fundamental metaphysical happenings, plus the grounding principles, the ideal mind should be able to derive all of derivative reality. For instance, given that Sparky the electron exists in set formation, she'd be able to derive that singleton Sparky exists. Given a certain physical layout and certain principles of chemical and biological grounding, she'll be able to figure out the chemical and the biological structure of the world. And I want to say just this is true of consciousness as well. Give the ideal mind the mere physical layout. Don't tell her the grounding principles through which the physical structure flows out into consciousness, and she's just not been given enough information. Chalmers is right. But the solution in all cases is to recognize that the ideal mind needs not just the fundamental inputs, but also the grounding principles. And then she's in position to know what sets exist, what organisms exist, and equally, if she has principles that tell her this sort of physical system flows into, physical system like mine flows into a consciousness that's experiencing, I'm pinching myself right now, a little pinchy bit of pain, then she'll be able to derive immediately that I'm experiencing a little pain. So I think the insight that Chalmers was pointing towards isn't that there's something special about the mind, but that in general, we always need these grounding principles. Imagine a physicist who just posited initial conditions and thought, I should be able to recover the rest of history just positing the initial conditions without positing any dynamical laws. That would be a hopeless task. Given just the initial conditions and no dynamics, you have no idea what's to follow. You need the initial conditions plus the dynamics. And so I'm trying to make the same point on the side of metaphysical structure. And the new hope that I was trying to muster up for the physicalist materialist view is that it might just be only physical stuff that's fundamental. That's what I think. It's only physical stuff that's fundamental. But that there are grounding principles that will tell us that from this physical stuff being in this such and such a condition, we get this sort of conscious experience. And now we have an entirely demystifying physicalist explanation for conscious experience, which is the holy grail for a physicalist view.